Funny, I spoke at a church in Southampton last week, and it was a room about 3 times as big as this, and there was no mic. So I had to project. So many of you have heard this joke, but I think it bears repeating. A rabbi and a priest are sitting in chambers talking about theology, and the rabbi looks up and says, "I am nothing." And the priest looks up and says, "I am nothing." And the janitor is walking by, and he says, "I am nothing." And the rabbi and the priest go, "Oh, now look who thinks he's nothing." So the reason this joke has always resonated with me is that it speaks to a very basic confusion that many of us have in New Thought. Because we seem to live in the physical world, we often think that we are using spiritual principle in order to manifest things in the physical world. We begin to think that physical things are the point, that money or success or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife are the objects of life, and this creates tremendous confusion. The first thing we have to understand, if anything in New Thought is to make sense, is that we do not live in the physical world. Our entire life takes place in the world of experience. When something happens in the outside world, the only things we experience are thoughts and sensations inside of us. The only way we ever register that anything happened is via thoughts and sensations. Thoughts and sensations are not physical. They're invisible. Something happens, and we experience a tingling or a pressure or an emptiness, and we have a thought about what that sensation means. In our world of experience, which is where we live, that is all that ever happens. So we experience everything in the invisible, non-physical world. The sensations we experience in any given situation, which seem to come unbidden and over which we seem to have no control, are based on whatever thought we're holding based on the past. Often we will be aware of the sensations before we're aware of what we're thinking. So for example, let's say you ask someone out on a date and they say no. This experience in itself does not have any intrinsic meaning. It doesn't in any way predict the future or say anything about who you are. It also doesn't tell us what the other person is thinking or what is motivating them to say no, even if they themselves tell us. Often, when we tell people what we're thinking, we're telling them our interpretation of what we think we're thinking, or telling them what we think they might want to hear. If in our earlier life we were taught by parents or family or circumstances to think that we are worthless, and thus are holding that basic thought about ourselves, we might have a sinking sensation in our stomach when we're rejected, when the person says no, and take on a thought like, "Nobody will ever go out with me, I'll be alone for the rest of my life." I'm just reminded for some reason of when Nancy Lamont years ago played the White House and my partner went down with her. I was doing Beauty and the Beast in Houston and I couldn't go. So my partner went down and her pianist and Nancy, and they're in the hotel and my partner knocks on Chris Marlowe, her pianist's door, and says, he knocks and Chris said, "Who is it?" And he says, "Turn down service." And Chris opens the door and he says, "I wouldn't go out with you if you paid me." Gave him turn down service. If, on the other hand, we had experiences in early life where we lost things or were turned down, but were supported and seen, and where things turned out well in the end, we might still have the sinking feeling in our stomach, but the thought we take on might be, well, they really missed out on something, or I guess they're not the right one, or something better is probably waiting for me. We also might not even have the sinking sensation in our stomach. There are as many permutations of sensations as there are people. So something happens that's intrinsically meaningless. We experience sensations based on the past, which are also meaningless in the present. They're just sensations. And we make up stories about what these sensations mean. And it is within this meaning that we hold our thoughts about the past, our present, and our future. All of this happens inside of us. Contrary to the way it often feels, we are not these sensations and thoughts. Who we actually are is a neutral, invisible observer of these sensations and thoughts. This observer, like sensations and thoughts, is invisible and not located anywhere in physical space. The Buddhists like to say, if you ask them, "Who am I?" they say, "I am nothing, nowhere. I am no thing, and I am not located anywhere." I am invisible with no location. So who we are is an invisible consciousness, being aware of and observing our sensations and thoughts. Any meaning attributed to our sensations and thoughts is not attributed by the observer. It is observed by the observer. So when you say, I look at that and I think that means this, that's I look at that and I see a thought also that that means this. If you will close your eyes for a moment, see if you can experience yourself as a neutral, invisible observer, located nowhere, experiencing thoughts and sensations rather than being them. Notice how you know you exist. That sense of I am that cannot be seen or located anywhere, but nevertheless is present in your experience as consciousness. Notice your sensations. Is there any tightness or pressure or itching or hotness or coldness, a sinking feeling, a pain? Whatever it is, notice them. Take just a moment to notice your sensations. And as you're noticing them, notice if you interpret those sensations to mean something. When I am aware that I am the observer, I become aware that it is not that I have a tightness in my stomach and that means I can never be a success. I observe a sensation in my stomach, and I observe that I have the thought that I can never be a success. Although this may seem like a tiny adjustment, it is in fact a very powerful and life-changing distinction to make. Okay, open your eyes. If we are unaware that we live only in our internal invisible world of experience, and unaware that who we are is the invisible neutral observer of thoughts and sensations, then we may very well be afraid of many thoughts and sensations, thinking they define who we are, thinking they will make things happen that we don't want to have happen. In fact, and this may be a radical concept to some, it doesn't matter what happens, since the only place we live is in the world of invisible experience. Many of us live in the illusion that in order to be happy or fulfilled or successful or okay, we have to achieve something or make something happen or have some problem resolve or some situation change. But in fact, what happens has no relationship to our experience, but only reveals time and time again what we are already thinking. That's why someone can be a movie star and want to kill himself. Or someone can have almost no money and have a great sense of contentment. Or someone can live in a studio apartment and think it's the most gorgeous place in the world, while someone else is living in a mansion and complaining about it all the time. In my show business career, I've met people who have numerous hit songs but are constantly worried about the future. I've met people who I've heard complain they are overworked and underpaid in jobs in which they're making millions of dollars for working only a few hours a week. I've met wildly successful writers who have been distraught that they didn't win this or that award, me included. And conversely, I've met people who are thrilled to be given any opportunity, no matter how small. People who feel that their families and friends are more important than any achievement. People who decide against big careers because of what they feel will happen to their equilibrium. Neither of these is better or worse. Often when we hear comparisons like this, we advocate positive thinking or gratitude, but this is not what I'm talking about here. What I'm saying is that when we can observe our thoughts and sensations, instead of trying to adjust them, run away from them, change them, or control them, we get to see what we're thinking and to be with the sensation we're having. So many of us are only willing to observe sensations we deem comfortable, or try to get comfortable when we're uncomfortable, and only willing to focus on positive thoughts and try to change the negative ones. This approach not only proves futile most of the time, since the more we try to get rid of or overcome these thoughts and sensations, the more they seem to return. But it robs us of information that is essential to our healing and our ability to be at peace. It is in fact the awareness of these uncomfortable sensations and negative thoughts that gets us in touch with the information we need to truly make sense of our lives and experience ourselves, including our history, as whole, full, safe, empowered, in the only place we can ever experience ourselves as whole, full, safe, and empowered, inside. So if our life is lived totally on the inside, what's the point of the outside? Why strive for anything? Why have goals? Why achieve anything? Or have anything? Well, let me give you an example. A shocking revelation that I had a number of years ago is that I can never see my own face. If there was a big smudge on my face, or here's a common one, a big piece of spinach in my teeth, and I would have no way of knowing it. You're at a party and you're smiling and everybody's looking at you funny and you go in the bathroom and there's I'd have no way of knowing it, except, of course, if I looked in a mirror. The mirror would immediately reflect back to me exactly what was going on my face, at which point I could fix it. On my face, not in the mirror. Imagine if you looked in the mirror and said, ooh, I don't have enough makeup on, and you put makeup on the mirror. And said, there, that looks better, and you walked out of the house. That would be insane, because nothing would have changed on you. Yet most of us live this insanity every day in all sorts of ways. We look in the mirror of the world, where we're only seeing ourselves, and we try to change the mirror. A mirror can only reflect exactly what's in front of it and cannot reflect something that's not in front of it. One of my favorite things to say is to the mirror, I am not moving until you move. You'll be there forever. So the value of trying to make ourselves look the way we want to look in the mirror is that the only way we can do that is to make a change in ourselves. When we make the change in ourselves, the mirror will reflect the change. But what's in the mirror is not the point. The change in us is. And there's no problem. You don't go to a mirror, do this, come on, reflect me. It just does it. There's no effort involved. You move this way, the mirror moves that way. So in the same way, our ambitions, our strivings, our looking at the physical world, we don't live in it, we're looking at it from inside. We're looking out at the physical world from inside. Is for the purpose of making changes in our inner world of experience. The particular result, who wins, who loses, how much we end up with, who's right, who's wrong, doesn't matter. It's what changes, opens up, is experienced inside ourselves. That is the point. And what changes are we trying to make? Well, to me, what we're always working on is expanding our ability to be with the infinite gifts we've been given, to experience love, forgiveness, peace, and infinite possibility of experience. And as I've done this work, I've come to understand that love, forgiveness, and peace are all the same thing. Allowing things, people, circumstances, and experiences to be exactly as they are. And since we only experience things on the inside, our experience of love, forgiveness, and peace is directly related to our ability to be with and experience our sensations and our thoughts exactly as they are. No need to run. No need to give them any meaning. No need to release or let go of anything or change anything. Just experience them. You may notice that nowhere in that definition was the word comfortable. Love, peace, and forgiveness are often uncomfortable because they involve experience exactly what we experience. Exactly as it is. That can be uncomfortable. You want love, peace, and forgiveness? Experience it. But when we can allow ourselves to be with and experience whatever we're experiencing, infinite possibilities open to us and are reflected in the mirror of the outside world. Not because the outside world is the point, but because what we are experiencing on the inside is the way we see the outside, whatever it is. So if it's all inside, if everything that's happening on the outside is only here so we can experience and work on the inside, let's talk a little bit about how we actually work with that. In our weekly thought exchange we've been doing here, we've been working on the issue of problems, what problems really are, and how they always help us to work on what we're really working on, the inside. In fact, that's why we create them. That's why we create problems, to work on the inside. When you have a problem, the only way you experience that problem is through thoughts and sensations. In fact, that's the only place the problem ever is. If you would, close your eyes again. Now, think of a problem you're having. Someone you're having an issue with, something you want that you don't seem to be getting, someone you resent, someone who you think is doing something to upset you. Just think about a problem. Sure, it doesn't take long for any of us to find one.
3 or 4.
That's right. Pick one. Now, think about the problem and notice where the problem is. Right here, right now, the problem is only in your thoughts. The person isn't here, nobody's doing anything to you at this moment, you are just thinking about it, remembering it, projecting it into the future, giving it meaning. All in your thoughts. That is actually the only place a problem ever is, even when you're in the middle of it. In your experience, in your thoughts, in your sensations, not out there, inside. Now, holding the thought of the problem, notice the sensations you have in your body. Notice where you have discomfort as you hold the thought of the problem. Just be with that discomfort. Gradually shift your attention from focusing on the problem to focusing on the sensations. See if you can get to the point where you're totally focusing on the sensations. Anytime you think of the problem, turn your focus back to the sensations. I'll give you a minute to do that. You'll notice yourself maybe wanting to jump back to the problem. Keep going to the sensations. Now, with your focus on the sensations, take a look at the problem and see where it is. Has it receded in your awareness? Has it shifted in intensity? There are no right answers here. Just notice where the problem is. Now, see the problem solved. Whatever it is, see it handled, healed, done. Whatever you imagine the solution to be, see that as having taken place. Notice your sensations when the problem is solved. Have they changed? Do you feel the same as you felt when you had the problem? Do you feel worse? Do you feel better? Again, just notice what's there rather than what you think should be there or what you might wish would be there. Just notice what your sensations are when you think of the problem as solved. If you feel better when you hold the thought of the problem being solved, notice if you're okay just sitting there being comfortable with the thought and the sensations around the problem being solved. Or notice if you find yourself saying, yeah, but, and reaching for the problem again. Okay, open your eyes. As I've been saying over and over, the only thing that's really going on when we have a problem is that we are having sensations and we are grabbing for the thought that we have a problem in hopes that if we could solve the problem, we wouldn't have the uncomfortable sensations we're having. When we can be with the sensations we're having, we have no need to take on the thought that we have a problem in the first place. Whatever the outcome of the situation, the only real result will be we'll have more sensations. If we can be with those sensations, there's no problem. No matter what's happening, there's just experience. If we think we can't tolerate those sensations, which is usually because they remind us of something painful in the past that we couldn't tolerate then, we will create a problem by creating the thought of a problem, which is the only place a problem is, and then try to fight off the problem so we won't have to feel the sensations. But here's the thing. If problems are a mirror of our thoughts and sensations, let's be clear, we're not causing the problems. We're not causing things to happen outside, but we are seeing everything in terms of the thoughts we're already having and the sensations those thoughts produce. Then if we try to fight off or even solve a problem, it's like trying to fight off our reflection in the mirror. The reflection will only change if the inside changes, because the reflection in and of itself is nothing. What's going on in the world is nothing. It's just a mirror. This afternoon at 12:30, we're going to do a thought exchange workshop on problems. And in this workshop, what we're going to do is look at problems we're having, and instead of trying to solve them, we're going to convert them from outside world issues to internal experience. So whatever the problem, we're going to look at what sensations we experience when we think of the problem and practice being with those sensations. And even though this may seem counterintuitive, something amazing happens when we do this. When we are totally aware that the problems are nothing more than thoughts we take on to get away from uncomfortable sensations, and when we become able to be with those uncomfortable, intrinsically meaningless sensations, the problems miraculously seem to resolve themselves. In Unity, in 12-step programs, and many other spiritual practices, we're told to give our problems over to God. We all know that this is something good to do, but many of us have found it easier said than done. I originally started Thought Exchange to explore why we often have so much trouble living and actualizing principles that we know to be true. And the reason in this case is that in order to give it over to God, we have to experience the uncomfortable sensations that are the original reason that we labeled things in our lives as problems. Once we can experience those uncomfortable sensations, we cease to need to create problems. And since they don't really exist in the real world, which is the invisible world inside of us, that is the real world, God seems to simply take care of them in ways of which we may not even be aware. The reason for this is that they were never problems in the first place, any more than our reflection in the mirror is a problem. What if we come to understand that what we call problems, resentments, upsets, failures, are nothing more than signposts, perhaps put up by our inner child being our historical self that experienced unresolved upsets in the past, to get us to experience sensations that we have usually been running from our whole lives, to experience with our inner child the pain that the inner child had to experience all alone in the past because the inner child had no competent adult to be with it when whatever happened to cause the pain happened. Only when we can experience that pain are we free to take on any thought we want and experience whatever comes with it and see whatever we want in front of us. So when we convert our problems to interior experience and experience that experience, we not only find that our problems solve themselves automatically, we could say they're solved by God, but we find that we reconnect to the inner child, the child of history that has been desperate, trying, dying to get us to be with it, while we were busy trying to fight off the signposts it was throwing up to get us to see it. Fight off the problems instead of experience them. When we can be with our sensations, we are essentially sitting down with our inner child and saying, okay, I'm here. You have my complete attention. Those of you who have children, think about how much that means to your kids. And for all of us, whether we have kids or not, let's think about how much it would have meant to us if we had someone in times of upset in childhood who would have just sat with us, felt what we were feeling, and listened. We ourselves are the only one who can do that for our inner child. And the healing, when we do this, is massive. The other day I heard someone say, if it's hysterical, it's historical. If something's going on about which you find yourself extremely upset or hysterical, the hysteria must be because your inner child is reacting. Stop. Go to your sensations. They are the key to being with your inner child. And simply be with them and watch the problem solve itself. Do not go to the problem. You're attacking a mirror, like the dog growling into a mirror saying, why is that dog growling at me? You're seeing you. I'm happy to be doing this thought exchange workshop this afternoon. It's 12:30 to 2:30, is that what it is? 12:30? 12:30-ish, yeah, if you're a little late, we'll wait for you. Because it gives people who can't attend the regular Monday evening sessions a chance to experience this work. We do it every Monday here, but some people can't make that. So whether you've been coming on Mondays, or whether you haven't been in a while, or whether you've never experienced thought exchange, I wrote here, grab a bite, come back at 12:30, and bring your problems with you. Don't leave them at the restaurant. And we'll work on converting our problems to experience. And as we do, we'll watch our problems transform from being things that are in our way to things that are healing us, healing our past, making us whole, integrated beings capable of experiencing unlimited possibilities in the present, taking on any thought we want while holding the past with love, understanding, and compassion rather than fear, and I've got to get rid of it. I was just thinking, I've been away for a few weeks. I love this place. I love speaking here. I love the sense of community that we all have and the willingness we all have to really dig in and do the work safely and together. I always get more than I give whenever I do anything with you guys. So I look forward to seeing as many of you as can make it this afternoon to work together on transforming our problems, evaporating them into experiences which are healing and full. Before I get off the stage, I wanted to sing you another song.